Hey y'all, thank you so much for joining me for another What's for Dinner. So to start off the week, I made this chicken pesto pasta. This was a new recipe to me and it is absolutely a keeper. So I started off by heating up about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Then I threw in 1 pound of some boneless skinless chicken breast that I had diced up into small pieces. I did try to spread that into an even layer. That way it can cook up evenly and brown the way that I wanted it to. I'm also going to season it with some salt, pepper, and Italian seasoning. So once that was fully cooked through and that chicken had developed some color, I went ahead and threw on in a big spoonful of minced garlic. And I'm going to cook that on in with the chicken for about a minute or so, being careful to not burn the garlic. And then I'm going to remove it to a separate plate and set that to the side. But let's just take a second to appreciate this golden deliciousness. But to that same skillet, I'm going to start my cheese sauce. So I'm going to melt down 2 tablespoons of butter and then add in 3 tablespoons of flour. I'm using all-purpose, but any flour will work just fine. And I'm going to whisk that, cook that down for a few minutes. It's going to get super crumbly, but that is normal. Any good cheese sauce starts off with a roux just like this. You'll also need to add in 1 cup of chicken broth. I don't have any, so I'm just using some bouillon powder and water. You'll also need a cup of half and half. If you didn't want to go out and buy that just for this recipe, regular old milk will work just fine. So I stirred that to remove all of the lumps, and I let that simmer for about 5 minutes. As you can see, it is starting to thicken. I don't know why the lighting changes so much in these clips. I guess I'm going to have to invest in a ring light, and hopefully that will solve this issue. But anywho, now that my sauce is to that desired consistency, I added in half a cup of some basil pesto. I have also turned off the heat at this point. That way the cheese doesn't end up like rubbery and chewy, if you know what I mean. But I added in 1 cup of some shredded mozzarella and about a half a cup of some shredded Parmesan. And now for the best part, I'm just going to combine all of that together to get that pesto distributed and to get that cheese nice and melted. This took like less than a minute. And just look at how ooey and gooey that is. I'm going to toss on in my cooked chicken. I'm going to get that, warm back up. And I'm going to add in about a half a box of some cooked and drained penne pasta. Of course, you can use any pasta of your choice. But yeah, I'm just taking my spatula and folding everything into that cheese sauce. I did reserve some pasta water to help thin that down some. And I must say this ratio of sauce was perfect for us. We really like saucy and creamy pastas, and that's exactly what this was. So if you love pesto, you will love this recipe. I've honestly only had it like less than a handful of times, so it's somewhat of a new ingredient to me, but this recipe alone has turned me into a pesto lover, and I can't wait to make it again. So I just paired that with my favorite vegetable, which is asparagus, and my favorite way to cook it is to steam it in a pan for just a few minutes. I like to have a bit of a crunch to it, and then I drain off my water and saute it in some garlic butter for about a minute, and then hit it with some garlic salt. It's absolutely perfect. Up next is the beef enchiladas. So I started off by heating up a small amount of vegetable oil in my Dutch oven. Once that was really hot, I added my chuck steaks seasoned side down, and then I topped those with some salt. And I'm just searing these for a few minutes on each side, and then they will be removed to a separate plate. And I'm just going to repeat this process since I did have 4 of these steaks total. Again, I'm not trying to cook these all the way through. I'm just trying to develop that nice crust and to get the maximum flavor. So if you wanted onions to be cooked in with your meat, this is the point that you would add them, but if you know me at all, you know I'm going to skip that step. But I did saute in some minced garlic. Be sure to turn your heat down to about medium because these pans do get really hot and you don't want to burn that. So that's why I quickly added in my water and some tomato sauce, and then I'm going to add in my spice blend. So all that's in there is some chili powder, cumin, sugar, and salt. And as always, I will have this recipe linked below if you want the exact measurements. But I will say this is the best enchilada sauce I have ever had. So once that come up to a boil, I add it back in my meat as well as all the juices that accumulated on that plate. We're not wasting any flavor here. And I'm just going to make sure that that meat is submerged down into that liquid. And I am going to add my lid on, turn my heat down to low, and I'm just going to let that simmer for about an hour and a half. Your house is going to smell amazing at this point, but this is what it looked like once it was cooked. It was nice and tender. I just took the meat out and removed it to a separate bowl, and I'm just using my little meat chopper that I got at a Pampered Chef party forever ago to break up my meat. So I've just pulled out my 9x13 casserole dish, and I'm just layering the bottom with some of that sauce that the meat cooked in. And I'm just going to spread that out evenly. And then over there to the side, you can see that I am heating up my corn tortillas in a small skillet. I'm just doing them for about 10 seconds on each side. This is what's going to help prevent your tortillas from cracking when you go to roll them. And I'm just stuffing those with some meat and cheese and repeating the process until all of my meat was gone. Then I'm just going to take that remainder of sauce, spread that evenly over the top, and then I'm going to add some shredded cheese to the top as well. Use any cheese that you feel like. I believe this was a Mexican blend, and I'm just going to cover this with some tin foil, cook it at 350 for 25 minutes, remove the foil, and let it go for an additional 5 minutes. I topped these with some chopped cilantro, sour cream, and we squeezed some lime wedges over the top. I know it's not the prettiest thing ever. I should have let them cool before I pulled them onto the plate. It's like the corn tortillas didn't really want to hold up. Maybe if you fried them in some oil before rolling, that would help prevent that problem. But regardless, the flavor of these were absolutely incredible, and they were hands down the best beef enchiladas I've ever had. Whenever I have no clue what the heck to make or just nothing sounding good, breakfast for dinner is always the best option. So I've had this Kodiak cake blueberry muffin mix in my pantry for a while now, so I wanted to be sure to use it up. So on the back there is instructions on how to do pancakes, so that's exactly what I did. All you have to do is just add some milk, vegetable oil, and a couple of eggs. Easy peasy, and if you have kids, this is the perfect thing for them to help with if they want to, but I'm just going to get those added to a greased griddle. I am the queen of burning pancakes. It's just one of those things that over the years I have had to learn to be okay with and realize it's not the end of the world. When it comes to cooking on my griddle, I always have trouble. I don't know what it is. Is anyone else like that? But I wouldn't consider it a complete fail because they were still really good and they were all 8. The second batch I did came out just right, so there's that. And my little tip, just flip them on over to the good side and no one's gonna say anything. So I just topped it with some butter, syrup, and some blueberries. Those blueberries were probably the best I've ever had. They were so sweet and perfect, and I just served them with a side of cheesy scrambled eggs and some extra crispy bacon. Everyone was happy. This day was the start of all of the ice storm craziness in Kentucky. There wasn't a whole lot of snow on the ground at this point, but the roads were completely iced over and we were stuck at home and it was just freezing. So what's better than to warm up with a pot of soup beans? So this is the brand that I am using, and I basically just follow the directions on the back of the package. Normally, anytime I make beans, which isn't that often, I usually cook it with like bacon or country ham, but I was aiming to make this our meatless meal of the week, so that's why I left it out this time. So I'm just emptying that package into my colander, and at this point is when I will sort through the beans and make sure that there's no rocks or any bad beans. I will remove them at this point. I'm going to give those a really good rinse since beans can tend to be pretty dirty, and I am just going to shake out all of that excess water and dump that into a big pot. You will have to add quite a bit of water. I believe it was 10 cups initially, but you will have to continue to add water as it's cooking because those beans really soak it up quick. So I let mine boil for about 2 hours. This is going to make the beans tender and that broth thick. And then I seasoned it. So I just added some salt, lots of black pepper, and I used the little ham seasoning packet that the package came with. This was my first time ever using it, and I don't really know how to feel about it. I kind of liked it, I kind of didn't, but I probably wouldn't use it again. So I just went to film how to make some hoe cakes, and I realized that my cornmeal is full of mold. I don't know if you can really tell, but we just got this bag like around Christmas time. It came out of like a fruit basket that Josh got for work. It is a fresh cornmeal that is local to us. I've had it in the fridge. I don't know if it's supposed to go bad that quick, but I didn't know what to do because I don't want soup beans without cornbread. So I texted my mother-in-law, who is actually our neighbor, because you know I can't go out and drive right now. The roads are super slick, and luckily she had this. And by the way, this cookbook and my little flour container is what I hold my little tripod on, so that's why that's sitting there. But I'm just going to use this like cornmeal, even though there is like extra ingredients in there. So I'm not sure how it will turn out, but I'm still going to attempt to make the hoe cake. So fingers crossed. So to my mixing bowl, I'm adding in a 1/2 cup of self-rising flour, a 1/2 cup of that cornbread mix, 1 egg. I like to crack it in a measuring cup. That way there's no eggshells. And I'm also going to be adding some buttermilk for my liquid. You could also just use regular milk. I didn't measure this part. I just kept on adding it until that batter was at the right consistency. I also added in just a small splash of vegetable oil. And that is it. I'm just going to add some vegetable oil to my cast iron skillet. And once it's really hot, I will start to add in my batter. I did about 4 of these at a time. And I am just going to cook those for a few minutes on each side. I always like to line these on a paper towel lined plate. That way it can kind of absorb any extra grease. And I also like to take each individual one and kind of squeeze out the grease. I just don't like eating a really greasy piece of anything. But here's everything all tied together. Like I said, the beans could have been better if I cooked some meat in it, but they were still good and I loved how thick they were. And those hoe cakes is one of my absolute favorite things. I love to dip them in ketchup, and then I just have some canned spinach on the side. This is a typical meal that I was raised on. We had it like once a week, so it always feels like home to me when I make it. Now on to the last meal idea of the week. I pulled this from my freezer, let that thaw out. I got a really good deal on this a little while back. It's the Cook in a Bag Teriyaki Marinated Pork Tenderloin from Kroger's. All you have to do is remove the label. You leave it in the bag. You don't have to cut any slits in it or anything, and you just slap it on a cookie sheet and throw it in the oven. I know the first time I ever made one of these, I was so nervous thinking that I was reading the instructions wrong, but trust me, it'll work out just fine. So I'm just going to cook that at 425 degrees for 30 minutes and it will be cooked perfectly. So easy, so quick. And for the sides, I'm going to cook up this bag of yellow rice. We really like this brand. And I'm also going to make some broccoli and some cheese sauce. So I'm starting off with some fresh broccoli. I'm going to go ahead and wash that and cut it up into little bite-sized pieces. Throw it into a saucepan and I've added a little bit of water to the bottom. I'm going to put a lid on and I'm going to steam that until it is pretty tender. And then I'm going to drain off the water. And then I'm going to add in some of this Velveeta cheese that I just diced up into little cubes. And I'm also going to be using some half and half since that's what I had on hand from a previous recipe earlier in the week. But you could just use milk if you wanted to. And I like to season it with some Lawry's seasoned salt and some pepper. So I definitely used a little too much half and half, but it's okay. As it cooled down, it did thicken up. So here is everything. So here is the pork. I know it's not the most appetizing looking thing. It almost looks like ham, but it's just from that teriyaki sauce. Pretty good. I think it would be better if it was like seared, but that rice, honestly, I burnt the bottom of it, but I salvaged what I could and I squeezed some lime juice over it and it was, it was decent. I feel like I've been making a lot of mistakes in the kitchen lately, but it is what it is. It happens. But this broccoli and cheese was definitely the star of the show. Over the weekend, we went out to eat with some of our best friends at Texas Roadhouse. It has been a while since we have been here, and it's definitely one of my favorite restaurants, so that was a treat. But that is going to wrap up this video. I hope that you felt some inspiration, and if you like this video and haven't already, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel. I also wanted to add that, I learned just as much from you guys down in the comments. I love when you all leave suggestions and tips. I have never claimed to be a chef. I am still learning too, so you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for watching this video and supporting me. It means so much to me. I hope you all are staying safe and warm, and I'll see you in my next one.